Well, I'm Jim Longworth, and welcome to another edition of Triad Today as we come to you once again from the beautiful Senior Botanical Garden in Kernersville. Hope you'll come out and visit. Later in the program, our roundtable will talk about some very controversial and serious issues, and we'll also have some special guests along the way. One who's going to talk about workers' comp, another that we're going to sort of honor for her accomplishments in the real estate world, and we'll find out what's coming up at the High Point Theater. But first, I want to start out talking about education, about scholarships, about helping kids, and two ladies that do a lot of that. And we're so proud to have them. My good friend is right here on the right. Wendy Poteet is President and CEO of Say Yes Guilford. And I'm glad you're back. Thanks for coming out to the garden. And first-time visitor to the show and social distance behind us, Amanda Roseman, Senior Vice President for Development and Community Engagement. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Now, Wendy, let me, for folks that don't know and maybe haven't seen you interviewed on TV before, just give a brief description of what Say Yes is about.
Say Yes Guilford is a nonprofit organization here in Guilford County that is focused on providing access to Guilford County school students to scholarships and support services dedicated to making sure they're having success in college, career, and life.
But you have had you do a lot of great things for the community, but it must have been tough during this pandemic because now all of a sudden you've got everybody's schedules and everything thrown off. Students are out of school, families, some of the moms and dads are out of work. How did you cope with that and help them at the same time and adjust?
Jim, as you and everybody else in the world saw everything happen so quickly, for us the very first thing that was huge on our radar was the fact that kids were going home and they were going to be doing online learning. So as an organization, our first question was, what kind of barriers is this going to create for some of the students to be able to participate in online learning? We were fortunate enough to be able as an organization to partner with many different community organizations in an initiative that was led by Guilford Education Alliance to provide dollars to provide that technology support for students and families as they were transitioning to this online learning.
Right.
We had to change our communications and how we talk to students and families. There was a lot of anxiety around what is my kid going to do in the fall. There were scholarship deadlines to fill out your FAFSA. Everything was kind of piled up at once, so we changed that communication mode to be more interactive and more one-on-one.
You really had to think outside the box.
Absolutely.
And, Amanda, were there any activities specifically or any partnerships or activities or anything you did in the interim to sort of get through this?
Yeah, so we moved all of our webinar series with Guilford PTA and Guilford Parent Academy online and did kind of a virtual opportunity for students to learn that way. We've since then created partnerships with Legal Aid and the Mental Health Association and community colleges around the area like GTCC, and looking into UNCG partnerships as well to host some other type of webinars and instructional opportunities for students.
Anything you want to say about the rest of the summer and possibly into the fall and how you're going to handle things? Because a lot of things are still up in the air, so what are your plans?
They are up in the air. Right now we are proceeding as virtual as usual in our new world. So we're doing all of our financial aid counseling virtual. You can schedule one-on-one conversations with our financial aid counselors and our financial aid experts on our website. And then moving into the fall, we'll be doing as much as we can tutoring and looking into other support services to do in a virtual way, including career and technical education exposure.
Well, Wendy, one of the things the pandemic did is, and I don't know that this is a good or bad, there's nothing good about a pandemic, but it exposed a lot of health disparities, didn't it? And now, how did you jump into that and try to work with families and students and address those kind of things?
I think for us, when you think about Say Yes Guilford, equity for us is one of our focus areas. It's one of the things that we focus on. Our complete support services plan is built on a foundation of equity. So we are always looking at the students that need the most and where do we plug in to fill those gaps as an organization in Guilford County. The overarching goal for us is always about systems change. So the way we look at it is we continue to do the work that we're doing. We scale it up. We know we're going to need to do more of that, but continue to push our work forward to make sure that we're helping those students get to those opportunities to help them be prepared to go on for a college or career.
Now, if I'm a sophomore or something like that in high school, I mean, at what point do I get ready to try to start contacting you folks to try to work toward a scholarship?
If you're a sophomore in high school, contact us now. Our registration starts for seniors on June 1st every year, October 1st every year. But we want to be engaged with students as early as 2nd and 3rd grade because the goal is to have students thinking about college and what their career looks like very early on.
That's true. Think about it early on. So that's great. When I was in second and third grade, I was just thinking about baseball and girls. I didn't know about scholarships.
Well, now we want you to think about scholarships and going on to college, and baseball and girls
That's
too.
right. That's right. Wendy and Amanda, thanks a lot. I want to put up some information on screen. SayYesGuilford.org is the website, and for our radio listening audience, again, SayYesGuilford.org. Wendy and Amanda, I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. You're making a difference in a lot of lives of these students and getting through some tough challenges. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for
Thank you.
having us.
We'll be right back after this. First, we all want to be able to say that we work safely and stay safe at our place of business and at work, but sometimes injuries can happen, and when they do, you need certain kinds of information. What do? We have an expert with us right now. On my right, Darren Howard is an attorney with Dummett, Fraden Attorneys at Law. Welcome to the show.
Jim, thank you.
Good to see you. And obviously what we're going to talk about is workers' comp. What is that?
Workers' compensation in North Carolina, and in fact in every state, is just a statutory scheme where employees that are injured on the job, they do have a mechanism, a legal mechanism, to have their injuries addressed, medical care, compensation payments when they're missing work, and then that scheme continues until that person is released from active treatment.
Right. Now, when I knew you were coming over here today, one thing that was in the back of my mind when I was wondering about is what if as an employee I'm off-site doing something and get injured? I mean, am I still covered? Is that still part of workers' comp?
Generally, the answer to that would be no, and it's something in North Carolina that we call the going and coming rule, which means essentially that if you're on your way to work or leaving work and something happens and you're injured, that would not be covered. Obviously, there's exceptions to everything under the law, and that would be the case here as well. And the case in point would be a traveling salesman. That person may be out of state, but they're acting in furtherance of their company's business,
Right.
and so if they're injured off-site, so to speak, that would be a covered injury.
All right, let's talk about a specific here. If I'm on site, I get injured on the job, what should I do? I mean, what's one of the first things I should do? Because I know you're advocating for people, so what do you say?
Well, the very first thing, and I say this in the context of small companies, large companies, different levels of organization and sophistication, but regardless of that, you need to make sure as the injured employee that you provide and detail a written report, because that may be the initial piece of paperwork that the whole case will look back to later on, and maybe months down the road or even years down the road.
Keep a paper trail.
Paper trail.
Do I mean, do I go to see a doctor first or a specialist and then call somebody like you to sort of have my back, or do I call you first and then I go to the doctor, or what's the process?
Well, in terms of the attorney's involvement, that varies by case, and it's across the spectrum. Sometimes people call us the day after they're injured. Sometimes people call us after they've been involved with the workers' comp insurance company for months. So it really depends.
So in other words, maybe they're not getting anywhere with the insurance company, and then that's when they call you, but others might call on the spot. So
Exactly. And part of that is that individual's background and if they've been through anything like that in the past.
now, if I get injured, basically speaking, and I know we're talking in generalities, but am I entitled under workers' comp to get vocational rehabilitation?
That really depends. My general response to that would be if you are to the point in your medical treatment where you are as good as you're going to get, so to speak, and we call that MMI, maximum medical improvement. If you're at maximum medical improvement and your doctor tells you there are certain physical restrictions that you need to be aware of, and if those restrictions keep you from going back to your original position, that's when what we call voc rehab would be appropriate. And I encourage my clients to have an open mind about voc rehab. It's a great resource. You have professionals that come in, they will do an initial assessment, they will look at your background, your work skills, your educational level, what type of job you would like to have as a replacement position,
Right.
and then they will customize their program around that.
Can I get fired from my job because I filed a claim?
Generally, the answer to that is no, and in fact, what I tell people is, in terms of wrongful termination cases, you are actually more protected while you have a claim pending than you otherwise would be.
Okay.
And the reason for that is obviously a public policy issue. We don't want to discourage injured employees in the state of North Carolina from reporting their injuries.
I got you. I want to put up on screen some important information. The website is dummettfraden.com, dummettfraden.com for our radio listening audience as well. Or you can call 1-877-978-3218. We have about 15 seconds left. Who or what encouraged you to become an attorney?
Well, I like to argue. I don't know if I should say it that way, but I enjoy the give and take in the courtroom, And at the same time, you've got the ability to help people during what I have seen as a very stressful time in their lives.
All right, Darren, thanks for doing this.
Thank
Will
you.
you come back sometime?
Yes, sir.
All right. We'll be right back now on Triad Today. I've been trying to get this lady on the show for some time because I'm just in awe of her talent. She's a real estate agent, broker. She does everything, and she's got a new podcast we're going to talk about. But she's like one of the top agents in the whole country. That's why I wanted to brag on her. It's like in the top 0.5% or something. I mean, congratulations to Melissa Greer. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, Jim.
Now, very quickly tell me so people get to know this. They'll find out from your podcast, which we'll mention in a second. But why did you go into this career? Who or what influenced you to do
Well, my mother was one of the best realtors ever in Greensboro, and I'm the youngest of 5. My siblings probably wouldn't want me to say that, and 4 of us are realtors.
Right. Now, this podcast interests me. I've never heard of a real estate or a home buying podcast. What's it called? What's it about? Where do we get it?
It's called Melissa Unscripted, and it's on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you're going to find your podcast. And the marketing people I use, Tiger Moth, they came up with it with me as a way we could do something a little bit different. And it talks about real estate, a lot of it, but a lot of it is I've got one of the guys, it's almost, we try and talk about different things and it gets very layered, but mostly it's about real estate, just tips and things that would help buyers, sellers, and new agents.
Yeah, now give me a tip, for example, for free, even though I'm going to listen to podcasts,
Okay.
but here's one. Is it okay for you to help me sell my house and buy a house? Because there used to be a debate about you should have 2 different realtors. What happens?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we're ethically required to treat all parties fairly. And a lot of times, I think you have to be good at both to do this. You have to know how to work with buyers and sellers to do both of those things. So, yeah, a lot of times we do help the people because I run my business very relationship-oriented, which is partially why we decided to do the podcast.
Right.
And with that relationship, people want to work with you on both ends.
Now, I know we're not doing a commercial for you here, but sort of this question is sort of that way because I'm wondering what should somebody look for in a realtor broker?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is you've got to have a good rapport with the person and trust them that they're looking out for you and that they know the business and know how to protect you in what you're doing.
Right. Now, on the podcast, before we lose time, I want to make sure I get this said because I want to put it up on screen. Melissa Unscripted. And I think the full title is like Real Estate Tips, Tales, and Truth. Is that right?
That is right.
And the website, I want to give a couple things here, is melissagreer.com. That's the easiest one to get to. And there's there's a longer one to get with Berkshire Hathaway because it's BHHSCarolinas.com. Because as I mentioned, you are with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Carolinas. That's a pretty good outfit. And just to brag on yourself, I mean, you found out through them recently that you were like the top 2 or 3?
Well, I was a top 3 in 2019 for transactions closed.
And that's nationwide.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Do you get to brag about yourself on the podcast, or you just?
Well, they ask me questions. I was a waitress and an English major, so I never thought that I'd be in this place. So I think that I've always think when you start to think you're all that,
that you're not. You're not.
But no, they do ask why.
I think I'm not all that. So
well.
that's, yeah. But now, one last thing, not to embarrass you, but during the pandemic, you donated some of your own money to some various organizations. What was that about?
Well, I think I work with a lot of local people, and I do a lot with the community, but restaurant owners, really, that broke my heart, what they've gone through. I think there's a lot of issues going on right now that I feel like that the best thing we can do is support them financially and hopefully get the world to a better place.
Right.
And so I've committed to putting a certain amount from all my closings toward any issues involving anything that we're going through right now, because I think we've got to get to a better place.
All right, and one other plug for the podcast. Do you do a new one every week, or what do you do?
We usually do one every couple of weeks, and normally, like right now, we just published number 7. We're going to do number 8 tomorrow, and we'll probably publish that. So about every 2 weeks.
And probably the next one you'll do will be called Melissa being on Triad Today.
With Jim.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. All right, thanks for being here. I'm glad we finally got you here.
Well, thank you for having me, and come on the podcast with
I will, and congratulations,
Okay.
and thanks for all you do for the community.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We'll be right back. Hey, and always glad when we can get Dave Briggs to stop by and let us know what's going on at the High Point Theater, especially these days where things have been sort of in flux. We welcome Dave Briggs, Director of High Point Theater. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Jim. Always a pleasure.
First, bring us up to speed on when the theater will be fully up and running, and how is it going to be affected by capacity guidelines?
Well, I sure wish I knew the answer to that question, but we're hoping that after phase 2, maybe 2.5, the governor allows us to have at least 50% capacity, which would allow us to have around 315 or so people in the theater.
Right.
We're working really hard to figure out how we can socially distance people in a live theater event. You know, we're going to have to block off every other row and
Right.
not sell the seats on the aisle.
But families can sit together. You know, if you want
Yes,
to bring your
exactly.
family, you're sitting
Yeah.
together, whatever. I know what I was going to ask. I was wondering about how the pandemic affected small and large performing venues. Did it affect everybody equally?
Oh, well, once everybody was shut down, it affected everyone.
Right.
You know, right now you can only have 25 people in an outdoor event, 10 people inside. So small venues are shut down just as well as the larger venues are.
Right.
So I feel really sorry for the Coliseum and the Tanger Center, but also for some of the small mom and pop little theaters.
Now, before I do want to promote some shows that we know are going to go off and we want people to look forward to. But quickly, before I do that, if I have our notes just flew off the table. Things happen like that when you're at the Garden. So anyway, if I've got season tickets, are you going to send me some kind of notification on what's going on week to week or whatever, or do I just go to the website or what?
Well, we don't do it week to week, but anytime that we have a change in a show, for instance, Ben Vereen moved from a date in November. He's going to be in April of 2021.
Right.
So if they had tickets for that, which they don't because the tickets aren't on sale yet,
Right.
They'll be able to find out through email and then also on our Facebook page and our website.
It's going to be important to keep in touch
Yeah.
then on this. All right, let's go quickly to the good news is we have some big things coming up.
do.
Jen Kober, September 18th. Quickly, what is that?
Yeah, Jen Kober is a wonderful comedian. She's been on Disney. I wouldn't call this a family comedy, but she's really, really funny. And she'll actually be the first event that we have back in the theater.
Wow.
Now, we've got some other things that are taking place that are rentals, but one of our first ticketed event.
Also in the fall, Tannehill Weavers, October 23rd.
Tannehill Weavers, a wonderful Scottish band. We've had them a couple of times before. And assuming they can get across the pond, they're going to be with us. They are amazing, and they're a fan favorite always.
That's another thing, yeah, international travel. Now, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correct. Is it Ernie Haas or Ernie Haase and the Signature Sound November 22nd?
Yeah, Ernie Haas and Signature Sound, along with the ventriloquist David Pendleton, who we had last year. This is our first really foray into Southern gospel music. And I've known Ernie since he was about 6 years old.
Wow.
And he used to travel around with his grandfather, who was a member of the Cathedrals. So it's going to be a wonderful show. Really looking forward to, and it branches us into a new market.
Yeah, that's going to be neat.
Yeah.
Now, Ballet Folklorico, February the 12th. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Ballet Folklorico de Los Angeles, along with Mariachi Garibaldi, will take place on the 12th of February. These folks are phenomenal. They had a long run at the Hollywood Bowl. It's going to be a great. Folklorico has a lot of dance and a lot of color. And of course, mariachi is that amazing dance that they do. It's
right.
really fun.
And I think you told me before we started on the air, you said something about Ben Vereen, who's one of my favorites. Yes. He got moved, right?
He did. We actually had him scheduled to be here in November, but with all of the pandemic and everything, we're a little worried that actually we had another venue who was co-working with us on a tour.
Right.
And they shut down their entire fall season. And so it made us move the event.
Had to move
so now
everything.
It's in April. Yeah.
Ben Vereen in April. Okay, quickly as we wrap up, the website is highpointtheater.com. For tickets, you can call 887-3001. You can get tickets on the website, but it's better to call. And I think you'll save a little bit of money
Well, and
that
actually,
way.
if I can say something,
Yeah.
because of social distancing, you can only get tickets by calling the box office right now.
There you go.
Nothing online.
Call that number. All right. Dave, thanks for everything. You're going to stay over for the roundtable?
I am indeed.
All right. We'll be right back after this. Back now on Triad Today, just about time for the roundtable, but another mention of thanks to the good folks, John Wisnett and his staff at the Senior Botanical Garden where we are today, and we hope you'll come out and enjoy the garden. The website's up on screen. It's a beautiful place. The gift shop's open, etc., etc. You will love it. Also, pick up your copy of Yes Weekly if you get a chance. I have a column in there. Get it anyway. To the roundtable now. On my right, but always political left, Ogie Overman, the great broadcaster and journalist. Back behind us in social distance, our good friend Dave Briggs, director of High Point Theater, who we held over from the last segment, and then Keith Granberry, founder of Helping Hands Consultants. Guys, we could do 2 whole shows on the tragedy in Minneapolis. I just want to cover a couple of side angles to this for a couple minutes. We're reeling from the death of George Floyd being murdered by a white cop. The Minneapolis City Council wants to do something similar to what Camden, New Jersey's done. They say we're going to defund and dismantle the police department. Would you like to see all police departments defunded and dismantled or reformed, Ogie?
Well, let's get rid of that phrase defund right now. That's not what we're trying to do. That plays right into Trump's hand. Let's kill it right now. What we're talking about is reform, restructure, and reallocate funding for the long term to make policemen, and better human beings, as well as the community at large. It has nothing to do with dismantling police.
All right, Dave.
Well, dismantling the police force would be like closing down the schools because of one bad teacher. So training is essential, and it's a systemic issue that we need to deal with.
Mr.
But
Granberry.
most policemen are good people.
Yeah, they are. Mr. Granberry.
I'm angry. You're talking about systemic racism.
Right.
Baldwin said that if you really want to change a system, don't talk to the policemen or judges or the wealthy. Talk to the people who are being done unjustly. Find out from them what the issues are, and then look at what they need to do to solve that issue, because if you don't, you're still continuing the cycle. And right now, we're continuing a cycle of systemic racism that's deep. So you're not defunding a police department, but training the police department, recruiting people who can look like the communities that they're serving is of utmost importance in today's society.
Yeah, I think we need a national registry. So if you've got a mark against you on abuse or whatever, and you get fired, and then you can't get a job with any other police department or even as a security guard. That's my feeling. We need to have something like that. Now, protests were peaceful for the most part. But in Greensboro, for example, there was some violence. Some of the cities had violence. It could have been outside influences. We don't know. But the point is, a lot of damage was done to a lot of businesses owned by small business people, mom and pop, black and white, Asian. Should those businesses be compensated here in North Carolina for the damage since Cooper failed to get the National Guard out quick enough, Ogie?
Well, yeah, yes, but not for that reason, Jim. His hands were tied. He couldn't do anything. We should do it because it's the right thing to do. There's money to do to help these businesses out that got hurt in the protests.
Mr. Briggs.
Well, some of these are actually up to the municipalities and the governors, and the governor may have something to do with it, but mayors that tell their police officers to back away and allow folks to destroy property, that's not a good thing.
Keith.
I don't think that anyone felt like looting and rioting was the answer, but any protest involves some semblance of destruction. You know, I used to spend a lot of time in South Africa before all this happened, and I sit down with Winnie Mandela, and she said that part of fighting apartheid was the incredible destruction of a system. Now, do we want people to just steal? Absolutely not. Should the National Guard be sent in? No, because if you have a police department that is well trained, you won't need the National Guard.
Which goes back to the first point.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, getting off of that topic, but speaking of compensating people, the Republican lawmakers in Raleigh want to amend the state constitution so that if you were damaged by the pandemic shutdown, that you can sue the state and get compensated for your losses. That would be on the ballot in November. Will it pass? Should it pass? What do you think, Ogie?
No, that's not going to rise to the level of a constitutional amendment, but here again, we could do that because it's the right thing to do.
Right. Dave?
I really think that sets a bad precedent. What I'd rather see is for these small businesses to practice civil disobedience and open up.
Keith.
What I like to see is the elimination of the economic disparities that we are dealing with that is causing this problem. Black people have a median income of $17,000 per household. White Americans over 140,000. Let's get to the root of it instead of giving peanuts in a pandemic fund, but let's look at how we change and create economic opportunities for everyone in this community that everyone loves and wants to support.
All right, very quickly, President Trump is mad at Twitter for putting disclaimers on his tweets, and he would like to see social media companies regulated. You know, once in a while, a guy like that can hit on a good idea because there's a lot of bad stuff that goes on social media. You think they need to be more regulated, Ogie?
Yeah, but for the reasons, not for the reasons Trump says.
I understand.
His account should have been suspended years ago.
Right. Dave, quickly.
Well, I think if you're going to put disclaimers on Twitter feeds, you probably ought to be looking at CNN and New York Times and everybody else, not just
quickly,
President Trump.
The president should be held to a higher standard because he's the leader of the free world.
Well, that train left the station a long time. All right, finally, there's something wrong with him. Finally, a strip club in Oregon, guys, is still closed under pandemic guidelines, so the owner has set up a drive-through where the strippers can dance for men and bring them takeout food. Guys, have you ever eaten lunch at a drive-through strip club? Ogie?
Well, in Greensboro, there used to be a drive-through car wash.
Here we go.
Used to be.
Here we go.
Yeah, it was called Harper's, and so they were one of our accounts at ESP.
Yeah.
And I had to go collect the money. It was part of my job to go drive through the top of
Yeah,
this
it's
car
part of your
wash.
job.
Dave, no, but I bet they pack a mean box lunch.
Yeah. I will say that Dave Briggs' wife, Elizabeth, is back there watching the taping, so Dave has no answer for this. Keith, have you ever, had lunch at a drive-through strip club?
I don't think that one should eat food at from a strip club. Not that. I don't think you should do that. Strip club and food shouldn't go together.
You're on some dangerous ground, Keith. That's all the time we have, except for this. Oh, speaking of drive-through service, this is true. There is a plastic surgeon in Miami that's now offering drive-through Botox injections for people who've been quarantined or whatever. They pull up, they roll down their window, and the surgeon comes out and he starts sticking them with Botox injections. Now, I understand the slogan to this is "Stop by and fill her up." See, because Botox fillers are...
I get it, Jim.
Why don't the three of you just go to the drive-through strip club? And for all of us here, I'm Jim Long.